You want to know what almost killed me? It wasn't butter, it wasn't pasta, it wasn't red wine, it wasn't bread, it was grief. It was burying people I loved. It was waking up in a quiet house after years of hearing another pair of footsteps. It was the kind of loneliness that sits at the table before you do. That is what almost killed me. And I'm telling you this at 101 years old, standing in the same kitchen where I've cooked for most of my life, because people keep asking me the wrong question. They ask me, Nona, what did you eat to live this long? But that is not the full question. The real question is, what kept you wanting to live long enough for the food to matter? Because I have seen people eat all the right things and still fade early. And I have seen people survive war, heartbreak, poverty, and loss with nothing but a pot of soup, a piece of bread, and a reason to wake up the next morning. So if you came here expecting a magic ingredient, listen carefully. I'm not going to give you a trendy answer. I'm going to give you an old one. I did not live to 101 because I followed a diet. I lived to 101 because my life never revolved around food as a product. It revolved around food as a ritual, as work, as memory, as medicine, as love made visible. That is a very different thing. I came to America with almost nothing. A few clothes, tired shoes, and recipes that were never written properly. No measurements, no polished instructions, just memory. A handful of this, a little of that. Cook until it smells right. Bake until the crust sounds hollow. Taste and adjust. That kind of cooking does something to a person. It teaches attention. It teaches patience. It teaches presence. You cannot rush dough and expect it to respect you. You cannot bully a pot of beans into becoming tender. You cannot cook well if your mind is always somewhere else. And maybe that is the first truth nobody tells you anymore. The way you prepare food is shaping the way you live your life. Today, people tear open packages without looking. They eat while scrolling. They chew without tasting. They finish a meal and barely remember it happened. Then they wonder why they feel restless, unsatisfied, tired in a way sleep cannot fix. Because the body is not confused. It knows the difference between being fed and being cared for. When I was a girl, nobody talked about wellness. Nobody said anti-inflammatory, gut health, longevity protocol, or clean eating. We did not have the language, but we had the wisdom. We knew food had to come from somewhere real. A garden, a tree, a field, a market, a neighbor, a fishing net, a wooden table dusted with flour. If it lasted forever on a shelf, we didn't trust it. If it looked too perfect, we knew something was wrong. If the ingredient list was longer than a prayer, it did not belong in the kitchen. Now people eat food that never rots, but somehow they are the ones aging faster. You think I'm joking? Look around. People in their 30s are exhausted. People in their 40s are inflamed. People in their 50s are already talking like their best years are behind them. And all the while, they are living in climate-controlled houses, riding in comfortable cars, with more convenience than any generation before them. So why do they look so drained? Because convenience is not the same thing as nourishment, and ease is not the same thing as life. My kitchen taught me that. Every morning I still begin the day the same way. I get up, I wash my face, I open the window, I put water on for coffee. I stand there and wait for it, not because I have no machine, but because waiting is part of the ritual. The aroma fills the air. The day begins slowly. That slow beginning has protected me from more harm than people realize. When you begin your day by rushing, grabbing, swallowing, reacting, you teach your body that life is an emergency. When you begin with rhythm, with intention, with your own hands doing something useful, you teach your body that life is still yours. That matters. And yes, I eat olive oil, real olive oil, not that lifeless liquid hiding in plastic, the good kind, peppery, alive, the kind that smells like grass and sun. I pour it over beans, greens, tomatoes, bread, not because a magazine told me to, because my parents did, because their parents did, because in homes like ours, olive oil was not decoration. It was dignity. And bread, yes, I still eat bread, fresh bread, bread with a crust that cracks when you tear it, bread that requires patience, fermentation, warmth, timing. Do you know what kneading bread gives an old woman? Strength in the hands, memory in the body, calm in the mind, and something even more important than all of that, a reason to continue. Nobody says this enough, so I will. A person does not begin to die only when the heart weakens. A person begins to die when they no longer feel needed by the day ahead. That is why I kept cooking after my husband died. That is why I kept baking after my daughter died. I could have sat in a chair and let sorrow turn me into stone. Instead, I made soup. I chopped onions through tears. I stirred tomato sauce while remembering voices I would never hear again. And somehow, the food carried what my body could not carry alone. People think cooking is small. It is not small. It is one of the oldest ways human beings have fought despair. You want my secrets? Fine. I'll tell you, but not the way you expect. I eat beans almost every day, but the secret is not just the beans. It is that beans force humility. You soak them, you wait, you cook them slowly. You cannot be arrogant with beans. They do not care how busy you are. They do not care about your schedule. They ask you to return to the pace of real life. I eat garlic, but the secret is not just the garlic. It is that fresh garlic means you are still willing to peel, crush, smell, and build flavor instead of buying a shortcut in a jar. That extra 2 minutes tells me something about a person. It tells me whether they still believe life is worth participating in. I grow herbs, but the secret is not just basil and rosemary. It is that when you grow even one thing, you stay in conversation with time. You notice weather, you notice light, you notice neglect, you notice care. A neglected plant and a neglected soul begin to resemble each other. I eat tomatoes when they are ripe, greens when they are bitter, sardines when I find them fresh, lentils when the weather turns cold, soup when someone is grieving, pasta on Sundays when the table is full. That is not a diet. That is intelligence. The body loves rhythm more than novelty. Remember that. The body loves being able to trust you. But let me tell you where people are really getting lost. They are trying to eat healthy without living humanly. They buy expensive powders and eat dinner alone. They count grams of protein and never laugh at the table. They spend money on supplements but haven't used their hands for anything meaningful in months. They talk about longevity while building a life they don't even enjoy enough to want more of. What good is adding years if the days themselves feel empty? I have had seasons of sorrow so heavy I thought they would swallow me. But even then, there was always a small task waiting for me. Wash the greens, slice the bread, set the pot, pick the basil, feed the family, even when the family became smaller, even when some chairs stayed empty, especially then, because a table is not just where you eat, it is where you remember who you are. Every Sunday my family still comes if they can. Children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Noise, arguments, laughter, somebody always arriving late, somebody always stealing sauce before the pasta is ready. And when I look around that table, I do not see calories. I see continuity. I see proof that a life can pass through many hands and still keep its flavor. That is worth more than any health trend. And let me say something else that might upset some people. The problem is not that modern life made food faster. The problem is that it made people feel unnecessary. Machines do the mixing, apps do the ordering, screens do the entertaining, and little by little people stop using the parts of themselves that keep them alive inside. Their hands do less, their legs do less, their memory does less, their patience does less. Then one day they wonder why they feel old, because uselessness ages a person faster than time. At 101 I still make my own coffee, I still wash herbs, I still stir sauce, I still fold dough, slowly, yes, with pain in my fingers sometimes, yes, but I do it. Because every act says to the body, we are still here, we are still participating, we are not done. You do not need to be young to be alive. You need engagement. You need purpose. You need friction, a little effort, a little sunlight, a little hunger before the meal, a little gratitude after it. People ask if I exercised. Of course I did. I carried groceries, I climbed stairs, I scrubbed pots, I walked to markets. I stood for hours cooking for people I loved, not because I was chasing fitness, because life required me. That kind of movement is different. It doesn't punish the body. It belongs to the body. I worry about young people now. I do. Not because they are weak. Because they are being trained away from life, away from slowness, away from real appetite, away from family tables, away from boredom, which is where many beautiful things begin, away from old recipes, away from elders, away from the sacred repetition of doing the same good thing every day. And then they are told that if they just buy one more product, one more powder, one more program, they'll finally feel better. No. Maybe what they need is not more information. Maybe what they need is one honest kitchen, one sharp knife, one loaf of bread made by hand, one pot of soup that fills the house with a smell no factory can imitate, one meal eaten sitting down without a screen with another human being. That kind of meal can save more than hunger. Listen to me carefully now, because this is the part I wish someone would say louder. Long life is not built by avoiding pleasure. It is built by choosing deeper pleasures over shallow ones. Fresh bread instead of packaged sweetness. A slow meal instead of constant snacking. Walking to the market instead of staring at a delivery map. Cooking for someone instead of sending an emoji. A real tomato in season instead of a perfect fake one in winter. One glass of wine with dinner and conversation instead of mindless excess. A kitchen full of smells, sounds, and memory instead of another meal eaten standing up over the sink. That is how years gather quietly, not through punishment, through devotion. And yes, grief still lives with me. At 101, you do not outlive sorrow. You learn to cook with it nearby. You set another plate in your heart and keep going. That too is part of longevity. Not hardening, not pretending loss doesn't matter, but refusing to let loss be the final cook in your kitchen. So if you want to live longer, stop asking only what to remove. Ask what needs to be restored. Restore ritual, restore appetite, restore the table, restore the walk to the store, restore ingredients that spoil, restore recipes that require memory, restore meals that take enough time for a conversation to unfold, restore usefulness, restore the feeling that someone is waiting for what your hands can make, because that feeling changes everything. At my age, I have outlived doctors, neighbors, friends, advice columns, diet crazes, margarine, low-fat everything, sugar-free nonsense, and more food rules than I can count. You know what remains after all of that noise? The same truths. Cook real food. Eat with people. Move every day. Use your hands. Respect hunger. Stop fearing honest ingredients. Keep a few beautiful rituals. And never, never let convenience replace meaning. That is the angle nobody sells you, because you cannot package it. You cannot patent it. You cannot turn it into a quick subscription. It has to be lived. So tonight, before you ask what supplement to buy, ask yourself something harder. When was the last time your home smelled like something made with love? When was the last time you fed someone instead of just filling yourself? When was the last time you ate slowly enough for your body to believe you were safe? When was the last time your hands made something that reminded you who you are? Maybe your life does not need a new diet. Maybe it needs an older rhythm. And maybe the real secret to living a long time is this: make a life that your body does not want to leave. That is what I have tried to do. One loaf of bread, one bowl of beans, one pot of sauce, one crowded Sunday table, one ordinary morning at a time. And if you remember anything I said, remember this: the goal is not just to stay alive. The goal is to remain in love with living.